Hey everyone, Dr. Crystal here at Looking Glass Chiropractic. This week is all about empowered choices. And what that means is figuring out how to navigate the health world and navigate just the world in general, understanding who you are and what you want out of your healthcare and your decisions in life. So, have you ever felt like you were talking to a provider or shopping around or looking on Google and you just felt like you were made to be wrong and everything that you trusted in your own gut and your own self was not correct? And that felt really icky and it didn't sit right. But you're like, this is my doctor, so this is who I'm going to, and this is who I'm trusting. And then it just leads into this sequela of events then that happen, right? So I will give you a little story about my own personal one that happened, and I'm in the healthcare world and I understand it and I have empowered choices, and I still was like, what just happened? So it was, God, when was it? 2021, I think. And I was like, you know what? I need to get in for my gyno exam. I haven't had one in at this point since Jude was born. And so it was at least 5 years. And I was like, you know what? Let's just go in for a checkup, see what's going on, see how healthy I am, right? And so I made the appointment. It was a recommendation from a friend who she really loved this doctor, and I hadn't been to a medical doctor in years at that point. And so I went in and I was like, okay, it's just the world that it is. And so I'm sitting there in this half gown, right? This it's a shirt made of paper. So that's what I was in, and then a tiny sheet that covers you, also made of paper. And she comes in, this gynecologist, does not introduce herself, does not really look at my case history, because at that point I had just had a cyst that burst that previous week. And she was didn't ask about it at all, but asked me 3 times about how much I drank a week. And I'm two drinks a week, is that too much? I didn't know, you know what I mean? And she was just asking me basically to make sure I'm not an alcoholic, I guess. I don't really know. I don't know what their quota was and why they had to find that out. And that wasn't even the most pertinent thing to a gynecology appointment, honestly. And so she just asked me about that again, even though I had to answer in these case history questions. And I did, truthfully. And she then goes into, okay, put your legs up. And then she just goes in, doesn't tell me what she's doing, even though I know because I've had these appointments before. But she just goes through it and doesn't tell me anything, doesn't tell me what she's does she feel the cyst? Does she not feel the cyst? And then as she's leaving, I'm so I had a cyst burst last week. She's like, oh, okay. And that was it. And that was just okay, why? Why did I have that burst? Anything, I think I was just so shocked at the experience that I couldn't even put into words. And I think I was nervous too, you know what I mean? You could be nervous as well, meeting a brand new provider, firstly, but then also being worried about something. So I'm okay, I had this cyst that happened, and then it's not even being addressed, right? And yeah, so I was just dumbfounded at the whole experience, and I never went back to her, and I looked at my findings on my own, and I didn't ask her for anything again. Needless to say, it wasn't a very empowering experience, and she didn't ask me questions as a provider should have asked. Not even standard of care, not even baseline standard of care. And it was just another person through her door, And I just felt like I was being rushed along, and she was just coming in to swab me, and that was it. And I'm like, a nurse could have done that if that's what we're going for. And probably could have done it with more compassion, honestly. Like the nurse that she had there was amazing, and did a great job. And this doctor was very not that person. And I think that when you are in those situations, you feel very maybe disempowered and don't have like all your thoughts in order, right? And so just to know that this happens all the time. This happens with gynecology appointments, it happens with OBs, it happens with midwives, it happens with doulas, it happens with chiropractors, it happens with PTs, it happens with medical doctors and pediatricians and family providers and healthcare counselors. And you can feel a disempowerment from any provider that you encountered, because it's your own personal experience, and you're hiring them, even if it's like a pediatrician and you're like, well, I need to have a pediatrician for my kid. Okay, but it doesn't have to be that pediatrician. Like, you can choose a different pediatrician who has more aligned values with you, who is willing to listen to you when you have concerns, who maybe you just need to hear it a different way, and this provider is not doing that for you. Same with when you're pregnant. Maybe you like it's so important to like, do you want a natural birth? Do you want to not have meds? Then find a provider who has a success rate of having natural births. So whether that's an OB or a midwife, does that person have a high transfer rate into the hospital? Do they have a high C-section rate? Do they have a high rate of maternal fatalities or maternal mishaps, let's say? So there's like just different things you could do, because you're in charge of your care, and it might suck because you might have to pay a little bit more for the care that you actually want and that you actually deserve. And it's your health and your body and your child's health and your child's body, and it's worth it. It's worth it 100% of the time, every single time, to get a provider who is right for you. So there are 3 steps that I wrote down for finding that empowerment in you and in your healthcare experience. So number 1 is education. So I want you to say you're going in and your child's having chronic ear infections. I don't care what provider you're going into. I want you to go to Dr. Google and say, okay, what are the options for ear infections? What are the natural options for ear infections? What is the success rate of tubes? How often do people have to get repeat tubes? Like, all that data is there. Like, it's out there, right? And your provider should have those answers for you too. If they don't, that's okay, because sometimes they're just like, they don't have that in their head, but they could say, let me look that up for you. Let me find that information out for you, because it's important, because you're a parent asking that to make a decision about your child that is potentially surgical. So getting the education is so important. So I want you to do the education, because it's also your job for your own self and for your child to educate yourself on healthcare and the things that you need to know. And we had that. I mean, we had the internet when I was a kid. That was not like, we had Encyclopedia Britannica, we can learn about the ocean. And yeah, so that is where looking at educating yourself, super important. There's so many resources out there right now. And then educating yourself about that specific provider. Do they come with great referrals? Have you read their reviews? Do you know their success rate on these different topics that you want to have success on? Does this doctor always put tubes in kids' ears, or do they look for alternative options first? So just looking at those things there. Next is shopping around. They call it a second opinion for a reason, because the doctor or provider is giving you their educated opinion based on their experience and their knowledge. it doesn't mean that another provider might not have a different opinion based on their experience and their knowledge. And that could be more aligned with your values and something that you're looking for. So getting that second opinion's super important, or just shopping around. Say you have a consult with one doctor and you're like, all right, well, I'm gonna take that into consideration and then I will get back to you. That's it. That's all you have to do. You don't have to make a decision there. Nobody has to pressure you into making a decision. That should never be a part of healthcare, is pressure. You should be saying, okay, let me look into that and see what sits well with my soul. Trusting your gut is just so important. You know in yourself, for you and for your child, what the best decisions are, and just trusting that, and then retesting that. Say, is this right? Is this right? And just asking yourself. So it's really important, because mom gut and dad gut, those are super powerful things that we are just given innately, that we can sense these things. And the last one is have support. If you're going to a new provider, take someone with you. Take someone who is more not attached to what's going on, right? Someone who could just be more super objective and doesn't have a lot of feelings in it, right? So I went with my my mother-in-law to her cardiology appointment, and I just asked a lot of questions, because she had an aneurysm in her belly, and we're like, what are the options? What are the rates? What happens if we do this? And this doctor, she just was very concerned about the fact that we all had to have, all of her children had to have tests at a certain age, so to see if they had aneurysms. Okay, but what about right now? Like, let's figure out right now what we need for the patient in front of you, instead of worrying about 3 other patients that you're never gonna see. So that it's just so important to have someone in your corner, especially if you're meeting a new provider, that can just ask those other questions and just hear things in a different view than you have, which is wonderful, which is why we're all built differently. So I wish you the best. And if you guys have any questions, definitely feel free to shoot a message out. But I'd also really love to hear, what are some sticky situations or sticky healthcare things that you've been in that you want to share, so that other people know that they're not alone in these like weird things that have happened in the healthcare world. And I'd love to see those in the comments, so feel free to share them. If you want me to share them anonymously, just shoot me a message. So all right guys, I love you. Have a great week.